you, Rebecca, for inviting us. We're going to explore the role of the early years leadership with you today. So I'm Vic Clues. I've been a teacher for over 20 years, 23 years now coming up, and I've taught across early years, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, but the majority of that has been in the wonder of early years. I've led a number of different subjects. I've led early years, part of the SLT. I've supported other schools through the local authority, and as Rebecca said, I'm the founder of the early adopter Facebook group, which is where I met the most amazing inspirational lady, Corrie Leach.
Thank you, Vic. I always say that Vic, everybody calls Vic the lovely Vic, because she's always saying lovely things like that about everybody and doesn't listen when we tell her she's exactly the same as she's saying about us. So hello everybody. We haven't got a huge group on, so it's very nice to see you all, and especially with your cameras on. As Vic said, my name's Corrie. I help Vic run the early years early adopter group. If you are a member of that group, will you put a thumbs up emoji on so I can see if you do know us or not from there. I am a teacher in Harrogate, early years lead, Key Stage 1 lead, part of SLT. I have been in the job for, again, over 20 years. I teach 3 days a week, and I am also director of early years for Red Kite Learning Trust, which is an advisory role where I go out and about to all the different schools in Leeds and Harrogate, advising and supporting all those schools. So it's very nice to be on a meeting like this. I know usually when I do meetings like this in this network kind of style, I know everybody really well. So it'd be really nice if everybody could join in and get collaborative today. Thanks, Vic.
So as Corrie said, we're really lucky to have you all with us today. So please chip in, share your experiences, and hopefully during the session it will give you a chance to share, discuss, and give you some time to reflect. We don't often get that, do we? We're in such busy days. So use the chat, raise your hand. I hope you've all got a tea or a coffee or a water. I apologise now, I woke up with not much voice. I will croak my way through.
Well today, are you, Vic?
I will. Oh, well done.
You're going to soldier on.
Oh, absolutely. If not, you can take over.
Oh, no.
So we'll get ready to spend the next hour together, and I hope you find it valuable. We're both really happy and excited to get to know you all.
Thank you. I'm going to take control now. So we are doing a new thing where we share the same PowerPoint, and we normally don't do this. So just bear with us. We've discovered many different technological problems with all being in different places in the UK and working for different trusts. But hopefully we'll bring it all together in this 1 hour session. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a deep dive into the research.
Corrie Leach. No what? Deep diving here.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. Take that back. No deep diving here. Okay, we're just going to look in depth at the research. Okay, so don't everybody switch off now about early years leadership. So we want to have a look at what it looks like in real life. I always think of it as when we're on a meeting like this, we are all experts in this virtual room that we're in now. We all know our context and our communities the best, but we also want to bring in expertise from the outside in terms of what the research can tell us. I think that's a really important element when we're collaborating today. So let's get us warmed up a little bit.
So I saw this, I'm sure if you are on Facebook, I am sure that loads of you have seen this doing the rounds. What is the most EYFS thing you said today? I'm sure you can come up with some classics, but some answers that really did raise a smile were, oh, should we use a tissue instead of eating that? And please don't lick me. Walking feet, kind hands, please don't eat the sand. And actually my personal favourite that I wish I had been there, or maybe it's funnier because I wasn't, was he's not playing with his food, he's chatting to his cheese. Who knew? Anybody want to share a gem? Use the chats now. Come on, you must have got some amazing ones that have come out from your little ones. Anybody want to put that, take off them, unmute themselves, share a classic, put it in the chat. let's get yourself. We don't know you, so we'd love to hear from you.
I can share something. We had an
Yes, please.
assembly today, and we've been practicing our what we do in case an intruder comes. So we call it sleeping lions. So in assembly, our head teacher said, you know, to the children, so tell me why we practice sleeping lions. And a reception child said, because when the dirty man comes, he won't be able to see us. So that's what she took from our explanation of an intruder coming.
I love it. I love it. Another one we've had in the chat. Please put your bottom away.
That was mine. I say that every day, many times a day.
Those ill-fitted trousers. Anybody else want to give us a smile? You just check the chat.
Nobody's got anything else to do.
Oh, they must have a classic. Come on.
I've got another one. I'm going to type in another one.
I've got one.
Yes, please.
It was during one of our interventions in phonics today. It was quite funny. So we asked one child what sound as a you know, what's the initial sound of horse, and the child just went nee. So basically sounded a horse instead of saying the sound. So he said the sound of the horse. So we didn't know what to do. So me and my teenagers looked at each other, and I just froze. And I was teaching trigraphs, and I just started teaching them the sound. It was just quite funny.
I love that one. I love it. I love it. Right.
I love those moments.
Yeah, that's why we do it. Let's get cracking, Corrie, should we?
Right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this today. Okay, so I think it's always really important when we do training like this, it's just like bearing in mind we can't change the world in an hour, but what we can do is maybe come out of it with some value, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. So what we were going to do was just really almost baseline your current feelings about leadership, and particularly early years leadership, based on whether you are a leader now or experience of a really good leader. And we're going to look at activity on Jamboard. Now I'm going to post the link in a minute, and it will look like this. So basically it's 6 post-it notes on Jamboard, and you all have tokens to spend. Now, as we can't do this as we originally intended, we are going to plan B. So plan B is I'm going to post the link, you're going to have a look and just take the time to reflect. We'll probably just have to do it 5 minutes, won't we, Vic, in the end, and maybe come back together on what you consider out of these 6 statements the most important element of being a really effective leader. So in that case, you'll give them the most tokens, or the least important, conversely. So this kind of activity, in terms of collaboration, I really find useful when I'm using it on network meetings or cluster meetings, just to start really as a tool for conversation. I've also used something similar to this just in actual real life post-it notes with teams as we're building, to try and bring together the type of things that might be most important to us in terms of collective vision as well. So I think it's really important to baseline. I've always found it really useful before we add any in-depth knowledge in from the outside research. So I'm going to post the link. That's right, isn't it, Vic?
Yeah.
And you're going to just quickly read through those 6 statements. Yeah,
just so we can share them together, have a little time to read them. So give me a thumbs up if you can read that first slide. Leadership is brilliant. Thank you so much for the feedback. It is great. So leadership can be described as a process by which one person sets certain standards and expectations and influences the actions of others to behave in what is considered a desirable direction. First one, leaders are people who can influence the behavior of others for the purpose of achieving a goal. Leaders possess a special set of somewhat elusive qualities and skills which are combined into an ability to get others to do what the leader wants because they want to do it. Leaders are able to balance the concern of work, task, quality and productivity with concern for people, relationships, satisfaction and morale. They combine an orientation towards innovation and change with an interest in continuity and stability for the present. They have personal qualities which command respect and promote feelings of trust and security. So that's the last one of our statements. So Corrie, explain to us again, how do we get to Jamboard?
Okay, so I've put the link for Jamboard in the chat, which you should just be able to click. Just keep in this meeting and then you can minimize it. All of these statements are from this book, Leadership in Early Childhood, Gillian Rodd, in case anyone's interested. And it's just really having 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to really get your head thinking about what your current thoughts are on leadership before we add and evolve a little bit throughout this training and webinar. If you can't click on it, you just might have to copy and paste it into a new browser. So feel free, you can turn your cameras off while you're having a read, go on mute, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Just have a really good think and then we'll feed back together. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Any questions? Just put it in the chat if you're unsure about how to do that.
Hi, hello.
Hi, sorry, I've got no voice.
Oh, bless you.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. I'm not in the room. So I'm sorry, I probably missed the link. So do I click on the link and just, do I click on that link? Okay.
Yeah, the Jamboard link. Unfortunately, I don't think the rooms are working because we don't have control of this room because we're not in your trust. So we have to do it independently. So what we're going to do is we're all going to look at the Jamboard activity and work on it independently. We'll come back in about 3-4 minutes.
I'm pulling you all back together again. If you wouldn't mind putting your cameras back on, that would be amazing, just so I know you're back with us. Did you manage, Sandra? Bless you. A couple more people just don't know if they're reading, busy doing their activity. Oh, brilliant.
It's so hard. I thought that was much harder to do that independently than in a breakout room. It's really difficult when we don't have that ability to collaborate together, which obviously is the most valuable thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, and hopefully we're going to be talking about that later. So sorry about that. Has anybody got any thoughts? Does any of those statements jump out at you for positive, negative reasons, or would they like to explore it a little bit further in the group? If you have, put your hand up, raise your hand, shout out, or unmute yourselves.
I can't see everyone.
Anybody want to share? Oh, have we got one there?
Yeah, I can go first.
Oh, fantastic.
I think the bottom two on the left-hand corner, so they have personal qualities which command respect and promote feelings of trust and security. I do think for a lead, to be an effective leader, you have to be credible. I don't think it's just about, saying, well, this is what I think is the right way to go about early years, because everyone takes a different approach, which is the nice thing about it. But I think being credible is quite important. So again, whether it be using evidence or instead of just dictating what's right, I'm going to get in and I'm going to show you, and this is the impact, let's look at it together. And then the one next to it about being concerned for people. If you don't have your team behind you, it's never going to work. You could be the leader with the best, have the best ideas, but if you don't conduct them in the right way, I mean, especially in early years, in our school, we have the same mentality that our LSAs are teachers in early years. We're all on the same level, working towards the same thing. So I think that culture is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're going to unpick exactly what you said this evening. So thank you very much for that. We have got anybody else who wants to chip in before we move on?
I think you're absolutely right about credibility. It's something I think new leaders and maybe younger leaders who are younger than the rest of their team find that really difficult in terms of the credibility and proving themselves. And I think having that is absolutely essential in terms of being able to prove what they know. But I think one of the things about this, something like this activity, is there actually is really difficult to define, isn't it? All of those different elements that combine to make the definition of a leader. It is really difficult and complex. I think, but what we all probably agree on is that it definitely involves that collaboration, like you were saying, and inspiring others, and that passion and dedication and capacity to reflect, amongst many other things. So I think the purpose of something like this, which you can use, which I have used and you can use with teams, is just to start that conversation, start it like we have done tonight. And thank you for engaging in that in a little bit more difficult way than we anticipated.
So Corrie was saying we definitely found it difficult to think about the early years leader and how that is more difficult to define. And we, as you do, Google. What did we do before Google? So we Googled a few leadership quotes, and a few of these classics came up. Perhaps not ones that we would suggest for ourselves as leaders. Maybe the children would adopt. Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way, which General George Patterson said. Maybe that's the child's view, perhaps not ours. So with very much the collaboration in mind, we need to grow that team around us to work well, to develop their professionalism. But we've been thinking about how to do this best. What are all the pieces that we need to put together to build effective teams? So I suggest that perhaps we start with ourselves, start with our own self-care. To do the job that we do, we know it's a balancing act, it's juggling so many things, putting on so many hats, actually putting on hats, and actually the metaphorical hats. Thinking about the analogy, that is the old classic, the beautiful, graceful swans going across the mill pond, looking stunning, looking graceful, and all that hard work, all that effort, paddling like mad underneath. And we know that we've got to take care of ourselves. So a question now that perhaps you may not get a chance to think about or have time is, what brings you joy? What actually brings you joy in your life? Any ideas? Anybody would like to share what brings them joy? Use the chat, raise your hand, unmute. What brings you joy? It might be the great outdoors, like Steiner recommends that children explore nature and the changing seasons and being outside. So true is of adults. It might be spending time with your friends, family, or going travelling. Oh, Corrie, thank you. You put in, oh, and Michelle. Michelle, absolutely, you're a lady after my own heart. Summer.
There was a little bit of sunshine today in Harrogate.
And Corrie, do you want to share your bit of
yeah, but
joy?
it is a bit obscure.
Oh, go on.
So I absolutely love Disney, and my heart really lies in the theme parks. So if I'm not planning a Disney holiday, I like to watch other people on their Disney holiday. So I will watch all kinds of Disney YouTube things that make me not think about work and only think about Disney. That brings me joy.
Oh, God.
And also Coke in a glass bottle. Full fat Coke in a glass bottle brings me joy.
Chink of the ice there. Oh, we've got some more nice ones here. Being on holiday, my God, and in the heat, absolutely. Time with family, great food. Yeah, I wonder if, Sandra, are you a good cook? I'm coming round to yours. We'll set a date. Right, so do you get a chance to actually think about that? What brings you joy personally in your life? And how much time do you get to seek out that joy for yourself? I hope you get to do that. So moving on, education is tough. It is really tough right now. We know that. Funding, budgets, staffing, recruitment, retention, morale, challenges of expectations. Okay, I'm going to say it. Those special visitors, you know the ones, and the perception of EYFS at the moment, really, from external viewpoint. So now we've acknowledged the challenges of our job, let's have a little look at the why we do this job. So for the next 1 minute and 16 seconds, let's just enjoy it. I hope you enjoy this clip. If that didn't make you smile, I don't know what will. I love that little boy in the red t-shirt as well, giving him a hug and sharing in that joy. Well, I hope you have those moments in life.
It was gorgeous. Absolutely love that. I think we've watched that quite a lot over the last 48 hours and it still makes me giggle. I love it. Okay, so we've got our why, we're looking after ourselves, and we're just going to think about a little earlier bubble now. So keeping in that bubble, I always call it our bubble. So if there's any challenges outside the room, the stress that comes with the job, I always talk about keeping in that bubble, and what we're going to do is build a really highly effective team within that bubble. And we're going to do this by looking at the research. Now, before we start delving into the research, I just wanted to say that today we are not going over what is statutory, because we are assuming that everyone who's on tonight on this meeting and who may watch this on the recording is already very well aware of the statutory requirements, and we would not want to waste your time looking at a document that you already know inside and out and you can get freely. But if you haven't got this book, which is the Successful Early Years Inspections book, Julian Grenier, he talks about 3 phases of effective development for teams, and phase 1 being practice what works for you and starting with the statutory requirements. Phase 2, and this is really where we're looking at tonight, it's phase 2, which what works for you, so what's statutory, and then building on that with the consistent research and evidence base, and phase 3, which would be developing leading edge practice yourselves. So we thought we would start with looking at the evidence base, but just wanted to flag up that we are aware there is a development point before that in terms of leadership. So what is leadership? Well, lots of the research tells us that outstanding leadership has invariably emerged as a key characteristic of effective and outstanding schools. And this view of leadership continues to be supported by the research today. I think it is tricky in terms of management and leadership and coordinator and leader and all those different definitions. And when we trained, I know we certainly weren't trained to become leaders, and we just found this little clip that really made us think about what it means, the difference between looking after your people, creating that bubble, and being a manager. So I'm going to just play this now. It's only maybe 2.5 minutes long, but it's work because it gets you thinking. Now, obviously that video referred to big companies, but I think there are elements of it that we can take and apply to our lives as leaders. And we're going to have a look at this effective leadership in the early years sector study by Iram Siraj and Lauren Manny. And I'm sure you've seen this before. It's been around a long time, but it's always good to reflect on what's in this study because it is fantastic. One of the things they did in this actually was try and find research that applied to the early years sector, which they found very difficult to do. So the research they did use with caution and only used it, but it did apply to early years leadership. I think that's what we need to do tonight. So in it, what they did was they tried to identify effective leadership practices, and they came up with maybe 8 statements that could be applied to early years leadership. Fantastic. This is amazing, isn't it? Because how often do we not get to talk about early years leadership specifically? Like, we're really honing in on now what it is we can do ourselves as leaders. And they did lots of different interviews, and it was more of a dialogue to elicit those behaviours rather than just a belief about what was happening. And they did it in a really semi-structured way after building on already existing research that they wanted to draw in as well. So they came up with, if I just bring the summing up slide to your attention, they came up with these kind of 8 statements that we've added there so that you can see. And what we're going to do now, and this is going to be kind of the nitty-gritty section of this meeting, where it's going to take us a little bit of a concentration on Monday for the next few minutes to really unpick what these mean for us in terms of practical and reality. So the first one was identifying and articulating a collective vision. So what they found was in the most effective settings, and they drew on all of the research from the most effective settings. That's what they did first. They identified what were the most highly effective settings first. And after they did that, then they found out what was happening with leadership in their settings. And they found that better leadership was characterised by having a clear vision or direction setting, especially with regard to pedagogy and curriculum. And that was shared with everyone in the setting. Now, some philosophies varied. They might have been strongly educational in terms of the vision. They might have been more social, or they might have been a mixture of both. But all of the effective settings were very child-centred. So all the staff knew the idea that they could promote these shared objectives and aims was absolutely crucial in terms of child outcomes. One of the things that effective settings did was really focus on the importance of adult-child interactions and developed better ways of engaging with children. Enough for me personally, when I took over my current role, which was a school with early years provision that was causing concern, this is one of the things that I first did, which was come together with the team that were already there and really try and hone in on what we wanted this vision to be based on these children in this community. And it took us, it wasn't an overnight thing, it took us months of sharing research articles, having a casual chat in the corridor. What did this mean for us? What did it look like? What historically do these children come in like? Are they low in communication? Are they low in fine motor? All of those things rolled into one for us to really get our collective vision, and that underpinned absolutely everything moving forward. And I would say it was the turning point for us in terms of development in my current setting. So that was element one. Element two was this ensuring that that shared understanding was there. So by that I mean that capacity, and I think we were talking about this earlier, weren't we, was to influence, that capacity to influence others into action. But you can only have that influence if you've got that clear vision in the first place. And so without it, you might have a team who are all working towards different goals, and maybe sometimes they're conflicting goals. For example, you might have team members who are led by their own vision of what early years practice should look like, rather than the vision that has been devised through consultation and collaboration, and really bearing in mind their own context as well as the research. Now, according to the research, one of the main obstacles, and I think many of us would find this, I'm going to ask you to put your hand up in a minute if you found this, so prepare yourself. Have you found an obstacle to success being that resistance to change, and team members who are maybe hesitant to change because they've always done it? So if you've ever found that in your careers, just pop your hand up now, because I definitely have. I can see some people have. Yeah, brilliant. I know that, because it is hard, and it's one of those things that we've really got to work on to overcome. So in this study, they did recognise that change and planning for that change was really an element that was a recipe for success. So change is best seen as a process rather than an event. And really it was the management of that process, whether you're doing action planning, whether you're doing short-term planning and creating that culture for change, that really largely impacted the success or not, maybe the failure. So one of the common things they found was making sure that changes were explicit, and that any resistance to change really meant that we had to embed a culture that meant that we were collaborating constantly and constantly reviewing our current practice, constantly reviewing our current policies. And I think that if you've got that in place, change isn't so scary, and almost it promotes a confidence in what you're doing, doesn't it? An acceptance that what we're doing is right, rather than that fear and resistance that maybe you're getting at the beginning. And it also becomes a bit more manageable, and it's based on things that you're absolutely observing and the children need, and maybe that you've experienced, rather than that obligation for change for the sake of it, just because someone new has arrived. We find this on our group, don't we, Vic?
Yeah, absolutely. We found lots of questions have fired at other people asking for advice from other people and ourselves, and perhaps around the practicalities of what you do day in, day out with your daily practice. So lots of posts about timetables. What's the best reception class timetable, nursery timetable, or snack time? What do you do? Do you do rolling snack? Do you do whole class snack? Any advice on that? So break times. Do you have break times? When do you take your children to assembly? And what we can tell you what we do, it works for us because we talked through it, but might not work for your team. It might not work for your children. They might not be ready. They're at different stages than us. So if you want to make a change on a daily basis, then that collaboration with your team to come out with the best solution for your cohort, to manage that resistance to change, to have everybody on board. So collectively you'll come out with the best outcome for yourselves and the children as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, I mean, if you are on the group, you'll see that I quite often post resources, planning, I post all sorts of things. And pretty much on all the posts I put on, I'll put, this works for me, it might not work for you. Is one of those things that I think we've really got to be aware of, to look at things critically, even though we can try out ideas, but at the end of the day, you've all got to decide as a team whether it works for you. And that's what the research is telling us, that if you're collaborating and making changes, that's where you're going to have the most success. So moving on, obviously another element would be effective communication, which is more than just speaking, encouraging, listening, reflecting. For us as early years leaders, it's also about having that knowledge of child development and also your specific context knowledge that works for you, that we've just spoken about. The study showed actually that there was some processes that were really, really important, such as being really clear on what your expectations are, making sure it's a dialogue rather than a monologue. That's what I feel like I'm doing now, a monologue. But what is really difficult is when we're in a team, we want to collaborate and come together and come to decisions together, and really encouraging that reflection. And they find that the leaders who deliver and encourage that effective communication amongst their teams, so their teams were confident to communicate. Also, that meant that their whole vision, again, coming back to that foundation of vision, was infiltrated through the whole ethos of the setting. So, and that also promoted consistency, because then when you're speaking to the families and the children, you all are sharing that same vision, and that's where that success came from. The next element, and this is something I feel really passionately about, I'm sure you all do too, is that development of a culture, a community of learners and people who can reflect on their practice in a critical way. Not just people who are going to take something off the shelf and say, oh, well, it says that on that piece of paper, so I'm going to do that, but really think whether it works for you. And it's about making sure that your team, I know I've had a team I've worked with for 3 or 4 years now, and they are constantly motivated. If I'm putting them on new training, if we're introducing new things, they constantly want to develop and improve their practice. And that's what keeps all our motivation going. And it goes beyond that straightforward reflection of, oh, we'll look at ourselves and then create an exact replica the next time we do it. I pulled out a really, really good quote, which I loved, from Biggs, which says, reflection in professional practice gives back not what it is, but what it might be, an improvement on the original. So it's that vision of the improved version of practice, which acts as an impetus for change and the motivation for ongoing learning and development. So even if you've done things one way, always try and do it another way, 10% better. I'll just tell a little story, Vic. I'm just going off tangent a bit again. Sorry, I do this all the time. My school in My Trust is, I suppose, known for doing really well in particular elements, and a lot of the ideas that come from My Trust are in a lot of the other trust schools. And my head went out and about and was pleased to see lots of ideas. But even when somebody takes an idea, they can always do it better. And I think that's a great thing, because they've been out and about and ideas worked, they've made it even better. And now she's coming back and reflecting on us, what we could do, how can we make it better? I think being so enthusiastic and passionate in her leadership also inspires me, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It does. Vic's nodding, so I'll see that as a yes. So this is something, this next one, monitoring and assessing practice, is something that I know Julian Grenier talks about all the time, doesn't he? He's always saying that the most effective settings have routine and consistent systems of monitoring, assessment, and that collaborative dialogue always going on, with children's learning and development at the heart of it. So that can be things like monitoring interactions. It can be like collaboratively planning, things like I quite often use that one. I'm sure have you seen it, everyone? The ECHAS one, when I'm out and about in different settings, just as a starting point. I quite often do action research with my team. So we'll pose a question. Usually at the moment it's on maths. I might do a pattern question based on the pattern trajectories, and each member of the team will have 3 or 4 children, and they will do almost like a gap task in between training, and come back and we'll discuss it and see how we can incorporate those into our interactions. I think action research, that having practice and reflection on your practice is really, really good. I know, Vic, you've got a lot of things going on with your phonics scheme at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah, we've implemented a new phonics scheme. I'm sure many of you have, and we're doing a bit of a series of peer observations, checking the fidelity of the programme, but also learning from each other as well. I think that's really important. So that monitoring, yeah, that you talked initially about the monitoring about interactions. I set myself a bit of a challenge about just over the week. I said to my teaching assistant, I'm not sure that I'm actually tapping into all of the children all the week. I don't know how many children I'm missing. You get those loud ones, you get the ones who come to you, don't you, all the time. So we just had a class list up and we thought about the quality of interactions. And at the end of kind of the morning session, the afternoon session, just on the class list, I just noted down all those children that I'd managed to speak to during the morning and I managed to engage with in a proper conversation, rather than, do you need some help with your coat? But actually, you know, that quality of to and fro. And over the week, we both built up a picture of children who we tapped into and who we hadn't, and it was really interesting, actually.
Has anybody got any other kind of things that they use day to day to monitor and assess practice that we could steal? If you want squirrel away, yeah. If you want to put anything in the chat, or hands up, or unmute, there's only a small group, so you're very welcome to. If it's complete silence, we should carry on. Is that right? Shall I carry on? I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. So I'll carry on and then can always come back in a minute. So that one is a really important one. The next one was building that team culture. And really this is about recognising the strengths and expertise amongst your staff. And as a leaders, we want to recognise this in our staff and them feel valued. And this is not an easy one. It doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes not without conflict. I personally have teaching assistants working with me who absolutely are amazing at like setting up provision and doing displays and things like that. So I will have my own vision in my head, and we've kind of got into a rhythm where I'll have this vision that I'll go on off a go and create it, which is amazing. Whereas my strengths probably lie in the resourcing and more the paperwork side and strategy kind of elements of the leadership scale. But always recognising the strengths and really utilising them. I thought was really interesting that it came up in the research, because it's something that I feel like we do all the time. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It might be just like collaborative planning, you know, things like that. And then finally, I think this last point that they made in the study, and I don't think anyone will find this a surprise, would be that connection to the community, that most highly effective settings involve the parents. And we all know that the research tells us that the influence that the home environment has on the child's happiness and achievement in learning school is huge. All the evidence supports that. So I think that element of leadership is something that we very much are already aware of. So just pulling everything together and unpicking those elements, just have a little reflect. I really feel like just revisiting this for myself as a leader, I think we'll all take different things from it. Which things stick out for you that you could work on as a leader now, and how could you make yourself and your vision of a leader be even better from what you've heard just from that one study? Think about what you thought of leadership at the beginning, and now we've had a look at that study, what's it like now? I think sometimes you see things like this through the eyes of other leaders as well. So, for example, Vic is an amazing leader of people. She leads us all on the admin team phenomenally well when we've all got our own stuff going on, and has built this amazing group, although she would never ever admit that's what she does, but she does. And you also have a leader that really inspired you, that you were telling me about.
Yeah, I have. We're thinking about leaders, and it obviously makes you think about leaders that have inspired, who have stood out for you, maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, and maybe you've learned from both. So this lady here is Mrs. Smith. Lots of Mrs. Smiths are using a pseudonym, aren't they? Well, trust me, this is Mrs. Smith. She was my first head teacher that I worked for, but she was actually my head teacher when I was little, and my mum worked for her as well, which is keeping it in the family. But what made her most effective was how she built up her team around her. She knew which kind of characters were going to work most effectively. She chose her staff extremely carefully. She had passion, she had drive, determination, charisma, and she was fiercely proud of her school and her children and the staff. But most of all, she was fun. She would think nothing of, at the beginning of an assembly, while Pig was playing, grabbing a member of staff up from the side of the hall and waltzing or dancing, or on Red Nose Day, standing power stance in front of the whole assembly wearing her husband's red Y-fronts. She was certainly brought a laughter and fun, and those moments stick in your brain, don't they? She was certainly a matriarch of the school. We had mutual respect. She respected us, and we definitely felt it, and we respected her back. She knew how to prioritise, the importance of utilising and developing staff. That CPD was definitely in place. And she made sure she used our strengths and our interests. Perhaps if we had an interest in a certain area, she was very careful in planning and steering us into developing ourselves, and then obviously doing our best for the school. So what do you enjoy most about your job? Have a little think. We thought about the joy, but what do you enjoy most about your job? And as leaders, do we spend enough time with each member of staff and discuss that? Do we develop our staff by tapping into their interests, or is it just led by yourselves? Do you delegate by their strengths? Trust me, it takes a lot to a lot of weight off when they're actually doing things that they enjoy rather than forcing. So do your staff have a vision? Do you have one? We will have a staff. We have a vision for all our children. We have a vision of our curriculum, where our children want to be. But do we have a team vision? Do we collectively have one of those?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think it kind of led us on to get that feeling of belonging, didn't we? So we actually, what we did, if I just take control, they can show everyone what we ended up doing. So when we had this collection of statements, Vic and I were talking a lot about it, and I think we both felt that belonging was a really essential element that we felt that teams needed, and it can be silly things, like, like on a sharing silly quotes, sharing, we have posters of quotes in the cupboard, knowing when someone's upset and giving them that time and space, or being there in the happy moments. And I think that belonging, sorry Vic, I've really taken over, but I really believe I believe in this. You keep going, because I know you wanted to talk about it as well.
Yeah. So I'll just take control again. So we had the together slide, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
So we really thought that was a good leader would make sure that the staff feel belong, that they feel confident, that they feel inspired. That feeling of belonging then develops the trust, the cooperation, the problem solving within the team. A sense of belonging makes us feel motivated. We know that ourselves and improves our happiness. So perhaps how to promote this, perhaps bringing your team together and sharing, discussing, maybe get your staff to list the 5 top things that they find important. If you've got a large team, gather those up, collate the ones and focus on the ones that come out most. Maybe words, focusing on a word once a month, maybe like trust or kindness or support or inspire, and put these in your environment, make them important for your team so they can see them, and then build these up over the month with quotes and memes and research activities that you can do together. Kindness is such a lovely one to focus on as a team. How can you show kindness within your staff, within your team, collectively as the adults and the children? Maybe, like Corrie said, put quotes in the cupboard. Shout outs. Do you give shout outs to your staff? The notice and praise. So our jobs are so busy, and it's so easy to just walk past a home corner that's produced overnight, or a display that somebody's whipped up but looks amazing. Do you notice and praise? It makes a huge difference. That CPD that you put staff on, well, do you value it then? Do you give your staff moments to discuss and put into place things that they've learned and share what CPD they've done? Supporting each other in those good times and bad. We know that those messages after school from to member of team, if something's gone really well, to celebrate, to cheer, or to support, make the world of difference. Have you got a line of communication that's there within your staff? Have you perhaps got a WhatsApp group? Maybe that doesn't work for your staff. They feel that at the end of the day, whatever time you finish, that's it. That's fine as well. What works for your team? It could be WhatsApp, it could be emails, it could be a book that you can log in to communicate. But those lines of communication, that sense of belonging, we really, really feel passionately that that's in place as well.
So we are, let me just we're coming to the end now really of all the research element. We just wanted to share with you some books that are currently on our bookshelves. I've already mentioned a couple of those, that Leadership in Early Childhood, the Ofsted Inspection one, the ECHAS one, the PDF of the study. I think if you haven't read Interaction or Interfering, that is absolutely essential. And I'm sure, please tell me you've all got that. Interaction, have you got that? You haven't got it? Honestly, it's so good. It is so good. I cannot recommend it enough. I actually give this book as gifts to teaching students as well. It's by Julie Fisher. If you ever get a chance to listen to her or go on any training, she is absolutely phenomenal in terms of building up the development of interactions. Julian's new book, which is the curriculum one, is also really good. He put on our group actually an hour-long webinar based on that book, which I watched last week, and it is very good. If you can carve out an hour of your time to watch it, it's all different chapters. And then Vic, you put on those 2 which you've used in the past, which was Your Successful Leadership and The Motivated Leader as well. So all of those I would say at the moment in terms of leadership are things that we have in our back pocket, things that we tap into when and if we need them. We're just going to finish with a little Minions video, and then after this we will stay on, and it's so good because it makes you go forth and build your teams like that. It's really, really good, doesn't it, Vic? Maybe not as enthusiastic as that. And then we will show you where the link is for this presentation should you need it. It's what we were talking about earlier, was it? No budget. It's a no budget situation, but we can do it, everyone. We can do it.
So that sense of team, absolutely, come on board. If we're There is no stopping us. So again, Curry said, thank you so much for joining us after school on a Monday. We hope you found it valuable. We've hoped you've taken some thing from it, a couple of points maybe given you time to reflect on your own practice or some ideas, or confirmed what you're doing already is absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending this hour with us, coming up to just over an hour. Thank you so much. And we have got a QR code if you want to. I know that Rebecca is recording the session if you wanted to watch it back. I'm not sure how she's going to present that to you, but if you wanted to scan that QR code for our presentation, the link is there. And we'll stay on for the next 10 minutes or so. If anybody wants to have a chat, anybody wants to share, anybody wants to have a discussion. But yes, thank you so much. It's been lovely, and I hope, Sandra, you're feeling better. Hope you've got a voice very soon. And take care, everybody. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you very soon.
Thanks, guys. And thank you to everyone who's watching this on recording as well.
Could I ask a question whilst you're here?
Of course.
In terms of supporting ECT, so I've got a team of 3 ECTs, all with, you know, different strengths, and, you know, it's the first year I'm out of the early years classroom and just leading it with an assistant principal hat on. So it's like dipping into another field. So have you got any advice, thinking about the reforms and moving away from, you know, that tick box culture? We've obviously devised things ourselves with what comes naturally to the team, you know, thinking about that no paperwork or paperwork for the sake of paperwork. So I think we've got, you know, the right tools in place for what we think we need, and, you know, we can justify it to the cows come home. But have you got any tips or anything you've seen that works really well for ECTs without kind of going down that tick box, you know, routine that I think we used to previously do?
Yeah, I think it is so hard. When I remember being so frustrated at the beginning of the reforms on the behalf of newly qualified teachers.
The training
Sorry.
The training was not there,
the training,
was it?
It wasn't there, and quite often I say, you know, and people say, well, how do you do assessment? And you find yourself saying, well, it's based on my experience of, you know, what children are like at this particular point of the year. I would, for me, I've got 2 ECTs in my school as well, and I think you can't spell out the obvious enough from my experience. I do make sure that there's planning in place in terms of the medium planning. I don't like it to be a tick box, but it's almost like this is a kind of generalisation of what I might expect for an age-related expectation. Things like Opal are really good because they do it.
I was just about to say Opal.
Opal's really good if you're new, because it does it in terms of age and months and what particular development. I think it's literacy, maths, physical development, isn't it? Those are definitely the prime areas. So they're a really good starting point for recognising what expectations are at particular parts of the year. If you haven't got that experience, I definitely introduce that. And then having regular team meetings and looking at the plan, and almost I quite often get the children together and go, right, this kind of group, these are the ones I'm not worried about. They're accessing provision, they're accessing the adult-led fine. These ones but need support. So these ones over here might not get there, but these ones I call my dangerous middles. So almost going through those children all the time who are going to really be spotlighting in terms of interactions in provision. It's usually for me about 8 or 9 children who are going to make the difference, and which areas then from those 8. So it's not so overwhelming of all of the children, like, because naturally your gut can tell you which ones are struggling, whether you know any statements or not. So I think it's just constantly having those meetings. And I don't have a lot of meetings with my team. I maybe do it once at the beginning of a term just to go over I call it my dangerous middles. And then I'm always, because I'm only in 3 days, so I'm always relying on my team to tell me what's happened and to tell me what they've noticed. And if I'm chatting to a team member, I think it's having that culture of, you know, that adult interaction and adult conversation is important. So they don't, just because someone walks in and they're talking, it doesn't mean they're just, you know, talking about the social life. They might actually talk something really valuable. So that's something that I put in place pretty much straight away. Like, it's okay if we're talking about the children. So that's what's important. But
yeah, those pupil progress meetings, sitting down half-termly, not necessarily looking at data because that's not expected now, but sitting down at a half-term, tell me about this group of children, having that chat, seeing if they're understanding and perhaps using the OPE, or perhaps using the development matters, or the help me out, Corrie.
birth to five.
Birth to five matters, sorry, the head. Using those as just your starting point of discussion. Are they confident in being able to talk to those group of children? Can they talk about what they've achieved, what their next steps are, what's in place to support those children? Going in just ad hoc as a support, absolutely as a support. Oh, tell me about, oh, Colin looks really busy in the book area. Is that somewhere he really enjoys? Tell me about Colin. How can we use his interests? So that pupil progress meeting, can they confidently talk about it? If they can, that is absolutely fantastic. If they can't, then maybe that's where the area of support is, starting with those prime areas as a starting point. Does that help or not?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I always ask in any of these meetings that we have, or PPDs, because I think it's almost like there's no right way. Everybody does different things. So I always kind of check for my own knowledge, you know, are we on the right track? Because it's not a tick box anymore. And you're so right. It's that talk, that constant dialogue that you have with your team, they have with each other. And I guess for me, you know, as we talked about monitoring and what makes an effective leader, for me, I'm always in there. So, you know, when we're talking about the children, I know exactly which child we're talking about, what they look like. And I mean, I don't like data anyway. I don't think any early years practitioner is too much of a fan of data, but we do a lot of stuff with just photos. So we've got our wall in the office, you know, those Velcro names. Okay, this child's made progress, so maybe we'll stick them in this group for phonics, etc. So we've kept it. We haven't got a linear system. We do keep things moving, but it's always nice to ask, isn't it? Because again, with ECT, some things that come naturally to us, and then it happens, and I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, you almost forget that. Well, I had this guidance as an ECT, whereas they don't have that now. And we've moved away completely from making files and keeping reams of evidence. We have one writing, mark making type book, which is again very free based on what the children want to write about. But other than that, you know, the assessments are all things we've devised in house. So it's always nice to hear we're on the right page, basically, especially things like long-term plans, medium. There's all this paperwork that some people do, some people don't do. So I guess it's finding that balance. And I think it sounds like what you were saying. We have a medium-term plan. You know, these are the books, these are the sort of topics and these sort of, you know, themes you want to go down. And then we kind of review it half-term, because you want them to be part of that curriculum process. You know, if they're not part of it, then they're not going to be able to speak about, okay, why do we, I don't know, teach this book at this time, or why are we looking at this particular topic and not another particular topic. So no, thank you so much. That was really useful.
It is so hard with ECTs. I do feel for them, because even the amount of training for us, well, in our trust, the actual teacher training, as in school centre teacher training, is so short, so much shorter than I have ever had. They literally have two teaching practices in they're in, and then they're like, whoa. And it's almost so overwhelming, you don't know where to start, because there's so much that they don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is tricky. But that I do remember feeling so cross on their behalf right at the very beginning. Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask one quick question, please, if you don't mind? I hope that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I just wanted to ask in terms of, I've been an early years lead for a very long time. I'm just like you as well in terms of EYFS lead and Key Stage 1 lead as well. And many hats, and it's like trying to, and I'm still in class, which I love, because I still get to know the children and get to see what it's like to be in class now, because you know every year it evolves. I you know, all my colleagues here that are with me right now, you probably understand the same, you know, situation that we're in. But one thing as a leader that I'm finding it a bit difficult is, not difficult, but you know, because we've been doing this for so long, you know, do you find that sometimes as practitioners, experienced practitioners, that we just get on with it, and we can't think of innovative ideas because it just comes out naturally, and you don't realize that it, you know, that you've got those, that it's just coming out, but you can't highlight it, that it's an innovative idea. I don't know. I mean, I'm just having a conversation here that sometimes I'm sitting there and I think, you know, if somebody asks me the question like, Harps, you know, do you want to come up with some ideas? But I just spontaneously do it, and I don't realize, I think it just naturally comes out of me.
Yeah,
But
and you don't realise what everybody else is doing because you're in your bubble, and you don't realise that it's any different, do you? Like you and you think, I quite often bounce off, I'll have an idea and then it'll evolve, bounce off whoever I'm speaking to, or a team. That quite happens to me quite a lot. And then you find yourself, when I find myself going out into other settings, I maybe do the same with other leaders as well, where we're bouncing off ideas. But I think in education, if you've been doing it a while, it all comes around again, doesn't it? In terms of innovation, it's on a cycle of, oh, this was in and now that's in, and it goes in and out. Yeah.
So, you know, for example, if somebody asks you that question, now you're more experienced than me. So if somebody asks you that question, you know, like what innovative, ideas can you bring? You know, for example, if like the senior leadership, if the trust, if our central team ask us these questions as early years leads, and they ask the question, you know, what kind of innovative ideas can you bring to your early years setting? Like for me, you know, we had our early years, we had our offset inspection last year in July, and we were fortunate that we gained outstanding in early years. But I still don't boast around saying that we got outstanding, because I'm celebrating it that we achieved it through a vision, and you know, like all your your aspects of belonging. I really linked myself to it, because that's how you would be able to create, you know, gain that outstanding, if you've got the right people there and you understand them. And what Alicia was saying about those two key points about, you know, being together and understanding your team as well. If you don't have that understanding as a leader, they're not going to be behind you. I've had staff, like I've had members of my colleagues, who have left us for, you know, different ventures, but I know that they weren't on the same bus. You know, we always just have this talk about, are they on the same bus as you? You know, have you got the right passengers on board? You know, and it's been hard, but if now, like, we've got the outstanding, the question is now from, you know, my head teacher, for instance, would ask me, what kind of innovative ideas would you bring, Harpreet, to early years? And I froze, because I just thought, oh, okay, because it, like all of us here, it just naturally comes out. We just do it on a day-to-day basis, and being in classes, it just gets there. Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I'd say back to him was, come and I'll show you. Come in. Come into my classroom and I will show you. Come in every half term and I will talk you through what I'm doing. Come in every half term and spend some time in here. Spend an hour, and I am sure they will be blown away. But
because do you think that, like, an answer could be as well, that innovative ideas is actually being able to spontaneously think of how to learn a child's learning on the spot?
Yeah. And exactly, and isn't that amazing about the early years? That is the one thing that I absolutely think is still in the reforms, and I'm so pleased about, is the fact that yes, we have got to deliver, but we can deliver it in any way we want. And with fascinations, with interest, it's still there. With the awe and the wonder is still there. And as long as you have an awareness of child development, you can take that child on the most amazing creative journey, one that they've led. And you can start with a child in September, and that child is going to take you with them, aren't they? We can hold their hand absolutely, and we can take them down one path, but they might lead us through 7 others by the end of the term.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, that creativity, that look, but yeah, get them in there. I think that's the thing about early years.
On the back of Vic's point, one of the things that came out when we were looking at doing this training was something called situation leadership. So
Yeah.
I'm like you, I had this like Ofsted, it was a monitoring Ofsted, but early years got outstanding, not that anyone knows, but it's like you don't want anyone to know because it becomes a whole big thing, doesn't it, if you're outstanding. And no one's outstanding every single day, are they? Like, and you're always evolving, and outstanding settings always want to do more, do better. But I think on the back of what Vic was saying, that situation leadership in terms of how can I answer that, because I'm, as a leader, responding to my new cohort this year, or I might have changes in my staff morale, I might have a new teacher coming in, and all of those variables influence any changes that you make in your early years setting, and it is your strength as a leader that you are able to react to them and the children. So it's almost like, well, you can, it could be different each year, however you approach it, isn't it? It's just knowing that you have to be aware of those things, and you're not, it's not, the job's not done, essentially, is it? It's always evolving and always doing more.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. It's just having that discussion with you know, like you know, as early years, you know, like we're also passionate about early years, and you know, you sleep at night, you think about, oh my God, what should we do? You know, what should we do for them? And then you know, when you're on holidays, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I should take that. And then my family will be like, no, okay, you're not putting that in your suitcase. But
yeah, my child, the draining board is often, are you really keeping another milk bottle top? Yes, I haven't got a blue one. Yes, I haven't got a purple one from a drinks carton yet. What's wrong with you? Don't you put that in the bin?
yeah.
And the collection of toilet rolls. Now don't get into the debate whether you put those in the microwave or not. Do you sterilise them? I just use them. There's enough germs in early years. But yes, absolutely. It's the passion. You have got to have the passion. But Corrie, you probably didn't say, but in your mock stead, which, oh God, I hate that word, that you were put through, the guy said to you, you don't sing your praises enough. You don't sing your praises enough of actually recognising what you do day in, day out for these children. So really, those praise and shout out boards, you need to do it for yourself as well. Don't you think? Take a moment and step back and think what you have done. Like the dinosaurs today, Alicia, you put that on for your children, and you came on and that was the first thing you said to us. Oh, we had an amazing day today. We've had dinosaurs in. Well, who in your school, who are the other children in your school that had that experience today? Anyone?
Did you do that, Alicia? Did you actually do that in your school today?
Yeah, we had the big, massive.
Because you showed me. And wow, that is so
I said only 2 nursery children cried, but we actually did it for the whole school.
Oh wow!
Because one of my kind of things on my action plan is to create awe and wonder across the school, because it always happens in early years, and actually, I mean, it of course depends on the type of SLT team you have, but lucky enough for these lovely stuff, I am on the SLT team, so it's, and also our principal is an early years trained person as well, so it really helps kind of set that vision. But understanding that, well, year 6 children can get just as excited, and they did. And you know, we've used a picture book. We're doing the dinosaur that pooped across the school. And today I was speaking to some of the children. I popped outside and did a duty, and they were saying, oh gosh, this is such a funny book. You know, it's the best book I've read in a long time. So it's interesting to, you know, and I think it's a good example for all staff to see that you can create that awe and wonder. And I think it comes, you know, in answer to your question, how it just, you're right, it does come naturally. It comes with experience, but the only way you can show it is, well, come and look in the classroom, come and look at this wacky idea that has come about, you know, seeing a squirrel in the morning. You can't really put that down on paper, can you? That's just something you experience by being present and being there. So yeah,
I really wish I'd got I kept on thinking about trying to find it. Actually, I forgot. But the picture of the scans of the brain, you know, daily we have, you know, what it looks like, and then when you're at play, when things are you've got joy and the neurons and the excitement and things flying off all over the place, and that's those moments that you remember, aren't they? Those are the moments that you learn, that are going to stick in your head. That knowledge can be built from is a place of, you know, excitement and playfulness that we provide. So make a note of all these days and absolutely pat yourselves on the back, because you have created those moments for these children. You're amazing people.
I'm inspired by you today.
Sorry, no voice. But how can I further enrich my environment? I've got I've got zero. I've got very little budget.
Do you want me to speak for you, Sandra? I know what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
So that's all right. So Sandra, bless her, she's got a very small outdoor area, and it's very limited. She's got limited space, and it's basically it's how it is built. It's the way school's being built. Unfortunately, it's next door to the school car park as well for staff. So she hasn't really got much greenery, although she's tried so hard to plant, you know, like some trees and plants, and she's got lovely green fingers, so she likes to do all of that. And then she's trying to create environments, but she's struggling. And I mean, it's something that as a I think we just need to look at it in more detail, isn't that right, Sandra?
And just additional ideas as to what we can do on a budget.
With limited budget, yeah.
I mean, I have no budget. I had budget. I have no budget now, at all. We do an awful lot of stuff with just things that for free, like deconstructed role play. You know, the cable. They absolutely love. Get so much out of it. You know, with the bread crates and the milk crates and the cable reels. I would say that's my most used area. We have a little allotment as well. In terms of signs, we make our own signs. We just gather pieces of wood and spray paint them with waterproof varnish, and anything we can get our hands on for free. Pallets, things like just with bean bags that have been donated. And just try and make it as open-ended as humanly possible. Just so you know.
What sometimes makes a bit of a difference is actually getting a gang of parents in and showing them.
I've asked they're going to paint a mural.
Oh, that's amazing. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting a gang of parents in, honestly, if they can see that they're making a difference to their children, does make an absolutely a huge lot of difference. But we've done previously we've actually done wow days where we've actually got children parents at the beginning, and we've got like an artist or a gardener, I think we did once, and they came and spent the day with the glass, and then it's got them inspired, and parents then tap into businesses, and then it weaves in and out, doesn't it? Because the parents want the best for the children, but getting them on board to develop areas is a good one as well. I'm sure you knew that.
We're quite big on the whole social media thing, and we're very active. All the teachers are really active on our social media as a school, and all of our local businesses know that we are. So we're doing something this year, because we have got no money, called the Year of Giving Back, because the school's 50, so we're giving back to the parents. We're not asking for any money for trips. We're putting on events for free, and local businesses are joining in and giving funds to things like pizza nights, or like nights and camping out, things like that. So maybe you could get really active on your social on your social medias and say, give me this, and I will advertise your local business for free, basically. But that's where we get a lot of our things this year, from donations. It sounds like it's a really tricky situation with it being small. And what was it next to, sorry?
It's next to a car park.
Next to a car park. Yeah.
Entrance to the car park is like right in front of our space. So there's a little bit extra we can take, but it's whether or not, you know.
Can you do anything like make an enclosed area, like with broom handle sticks and things like that in you know, so that you've got more of a tented den? They always love a den, don't they, that's open-ended, and then like a construction area, which is a deconstructed area, I suppose would work best. Then it's they can get as many possibilities out of it as possible.